Diplomatic strategy. Ukraine to hold direct talks with U.S. delegation ahead of trilateral meeting. Black Sea logistics crippled. Ukrainian strike disrupts oil and ammonia transshipment at Tamannaftogaz. The sanctions trap. Russian oil exports stalled as shipowners avoid trade risks despite record profits. Volodymyr Zelenskyy has announced upcoming trilateral negotiations between Ukraine, the United States, and Russia, set to take place in the United Arab Emirates on 23rd and 24th of January. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, the Ukrainian president clarified the sequence of the upcoming meetings, stating that the Ukrainian team will first hold a separate session with U.S. representatives. Following these initial consultations, the trilateral negotiations will be formally scheduled.
It will be the first trilateral meeting in Emirates. It will be tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Yes, it will be 2 days meetings in Emirates. I hope that Emirates know about it. Yes, sometimes we have such surprises from American side. Yeah. But in any way, they will go there, and I think this is good. If on the technical level, we'll begin this trilateral meeting.
Late last night, Russian dictator Putin met with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff for negotiations that lasted over 3.5 hours. The Kremlin described the talks as constructive and candid, noting that a long-term settlement and ending of the war is impossible without resolving the territorial issue. Obviously, the Kremlin meant that Russian troops would not leave Donbass. Putin emphasized that Russia intends to continue the war until a so-called political and diplomatic settlement is reached. This statement suggests that Moscow remains firm on its aggressive objectives. Volodymyr Zelenskyy met with Donald Trump yesterday at the World Economic Forum in Davos. The conversation lasted approximately 1 hour. According to the Ukrainian president, the two sides discussed the work of their negotiating teams in detail. All documents have become more structured and better prepared, a crucial step for future progress. During the meeting, President Zelenskyy expressed his hope that with Donald Trump's assistance, Ukraine could further strengthen its air defense systems. He specifically emphasized that no security guarantees for Ukraine would be effective without the direct participation of the United States. Commenting on the meeting, the U.S. president stated that his message to Putin remains unchanged. The war must end. Trump described the talks with Zelenskyy as a very good conversation.
Right now, we are working actively with partners on security guarantees, and that is a very good step and the right signal that UK and France are ready to actually commit their forces on the ground, and there is already a first agreement on that. But the backstop of President Trump is needed. And again, no security guarantees work without the US.
In the Russian city of Penza, a fire broke out at an oil depot as a result of an attack of drones. The governor of the Penza region has admitted the accident. It is reported that last night, unknown drones were spotted in the sky over the Penza region. Subsequently, information began to emerge about a fire at a local oil depot. The fire started at around 4 a.m. after several explosions. Drones of the Security Service of Ukraine struck the Tamannaftogaz oil terminal in the Krasnodar Krai of the Russian Federation. As reported by the Security Service of Ukraine, technological pipelines on the piers were damaged. Petroleum products leaked from the damaged tanks and caught fire. The flames spread over an area of 7,000 square meters. According to preliminary estimates, the damages amount to approximately $50 million. This port is one of the largest in the Black Sea region and provides transshipment of oil, gas, and ammonia. Its tank farm for storing petroleum products and liquefied gas exceeds 1 million cubic meters. Volodymyr Zelenskyy called on Europe to stop Russian oil tankers, following the example of the United States. The Ukrainian president emphasized that Europe must act more proactively to ensure that Russian dictator Putin is left without the money to wage war.
Why can't President Trump stop tankers from the shadow fleet and seize oil, but Europe doesn't? Russian oil is being transported right along European shores. That oil funds the war against Ukraine. That oil helps destabilize Europe.
The French Navy detained an oil tanker of the so-called shadow fleet of the Russian Federation. This was stated by French President Emmanuel Macron. According to him, the operation was carried out in the Mediterranean Sea. As reported by the Maritime Prefecture of France, the vessel in question is the Grinch. It departed from Murmansk in early January. The tanker was included in the sanction lists of the European Union, the USA, and the UK last summer. A judicial investigation has been initiated.
We will not tolerate any violations. The operation was carried out on the high seas with the support of several of our allies. It was conducted in strict accordance with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. We intend to comply with international law and ensure the effective application of sanctions. The activities of the Shadow Fleet contribute to the financing of the war of aggression against Ukraine. Emmanuel Macron, President of France, on the social network X.
Russia is facing a severe shortage of tankers for oil transportation. According to reports from Bloomberg, shipowners are increasingly refusing to provide their vessels due to the heightened risk of falling under international sanctions. The impact on logistics costs has been dramatic. At the end of December, the average cost of transporting Russian Urals crude from Primorsk to India's west coast surged to over $60 per ton. Just 1 year ago, that rate stood at approximately $25 per ton. Why Russian oil export is becoming increasingly risky and significantly less profitable. In the next story for you.
India is reducing purchases of Russian oil in favor of Middle Eastern fuel, Reuters reports citing sources. 6 months ago, U.S. President Donald Trump imposed 50% duties on most Indian goods to force New Delhi to stop importing sanctioned Russian oil. In December 2025, the volume of fuel purchases from Russia fell to a 2-year low.
The shift away from Russia comes as Middle East producers, armed with higher output quotas from the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, are keeping global markets well supplied, softening the impact on prices. In the latest change, state refiner Bharat Petroleum Corp opens new tab awarded 1-year tenders to buy Iraqi Basra and Omani crude to trader Trafigura and is in the market to buy Murban oil from the United Arab Emirates under a separate tender, said the sources, who sought anonymity. From a publication by Reuters.
Beijing was quick to take advantage of the situation. China is lowering prices for purchasing Russian oil, Bloomberg reports, citing sources. Since the beginning of 2026, the PRC has increased imports of Urals to 400,000 barrels per day, but the cost per barrel has fallen by $10. In fact, Moscow simply had no choice.
With India curtailing purchases, the amount of Urals being held on tankers has surged to more than 13 million barrels, the highest level in at least a decade, according to ship tracking firm Kepler Limited. Nearly half of that volume is in the Arabian Sea, but close to a fifth is in the Singapore Strait and the Yellow Sea, placing it within relatively easy reach of Chinese buyers, from a publication by Bloomberg.
A significant portion of the oil Russia transports using the so-called Shadow Fleet tankers. On January 20th, the U.S. Southern Command arrested the vessel Sagitta in the Caribbean Sea. It was detained as part of the campaign against illegal sales of Venezuelan oil. According to the War Sanctions website, the tanker Sagitta is part of Russia's Shadow Fleet and is under restrictions from Ukraine, the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, the EU, Switzerland, Australia, and New Zealand. This is already the 7th vessel the United States has detained in recent weeks. Such decisive actions by Washington may push European countries toward more active countermeasures against the Shadow Fleet, analysts believe.
Last year, there was a very striking case when it turned out that a significant part of the Russian Shadow Fleet was registered in Gabon, had Gabonese registration documents, and in the state of Gabon, no one knew anything about it. That is, the documents were completely fake, bogus. And under international law, such vessels can be detained, arrested, anchored, and not allowed anywhere. So now, if Europe decisively takes this up, the first signs are already appearing, then Russia will face huge problems with oil exports via the Baltic. And oil exports via the Baltic account for about 60% of all Russian oil exports.
If global markets stabilize, the price of Russian oil may fall below the cost of production, experts forecast.
I want to remind you of Trump's statement that his ultimate goal is to form a Brent oil price on the world market at $50 per barrel. If that happens, Russian oil will be quoted at around $32 to $33, which is below the actual cost of producing Russian oil. Under such conditions, Russian oil companies will become unprofitable. That is, there will be no more talk of paying a potential buyer to take Russian oil.
Russia's 2026 budget includes an export oil price of $59 per barrel. Last year, the government had to adjust the annual budget several times to fit into the sharply reduced oil and gas revenues. Social expenditures were mainly cut. Expenditures on continuing Russia's war against Ukraine only increased. Reported by Andrei Dmitrenko, UATV News.
That's all for today's News Digest. Stay informed, stay critical, like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.